Don't leave us, human, begged the four children. Hunters have offered millions in bounties for our heads. If you don't save us, others will hurt us. The rust-stained corridors of Orbital 9 reeked of recycled air and desperation. Donald Rell pushed through the crowded marketplace, his weathered face scanning the vendors, hawking salvage tech and questionable food. The station orbited a dying star, drawing the galaxy's outcasts like moths to a fading flame. He'd been here 3 days waiting for passage to the outer rim. His mercenary days were behind him, at least that's what he told himself. The credits from his last job would buy him a quiet life somewhere far from bounty hunters and corporate wars. All he needed was a ship willing to take him there. That's when he heard them. "Don't leave us," came a small voice from the shadows of Loading Bay 7. Donald paused, hand instinctively moving to the plasma knife at his belt. 4 figures huddled behind a stack of storage containers, barely visible in the dim light. Children. Their skin had an unusual blue tint, and their silver hair caught what little illumination filtered through the grimy viewport. The eldest, a girl who couldn't be more than 14, stepped forward. Her eyes held too much fear for someone so young. "Please, sir, we've been here for days. No one will help us." "Where are your parents?" Donald asked, though something in their manner suggested he already knew the answer. "Gone," said a boy who looked to be around 12. "The hunters took them." Donald's blood chilled. Hunters meant bounties. Bounties meant trouble. He started to turn away, but the girl grabbed his sleeve with surprising strength. "We can pay," she whispered urgently. "We have something valuable." "Kid, whatever you think you have, it's not worth—" "We're Lurians," the girl interrupted, her voice barely audible above the station's mechanical hum. Donald froze. Every spacer in the galaxy knew that name. The Lurian dynasty had ruled the Azurian systems for centuries before their mysterious disappearance 5 years ago. If these children were telling the truth, they were worth more than most planets. "Prove it," he said quietly. The girl rolled up her sleeve, revealing an intricate birthmark that spiraled from her wrist to her elbow. The mark of the Lurian bloodline. The 3 other children showed similar markings. "My name is Kara," she said. "These are my brothers Jake and Sam, and my sister Emma. We've been running for 2 years." Donald looked around the loading bay, noting the escape routes and potential hiding spots. Old habits died hard. "How many hunters are after you?" "All of them," Jake said bitterly. "The usurper put a 10 million credit bounty on each of our heads." 40 million credits. Donald had never seen that kind of money in one place. For a moment he considered the possibilities. Then he looked at their faces, gaunt from hunger, hollow from loss, but still burning with determination. "There's a repair shop on level 5, he said finally. "Owner's name is Flora. Tell her Donald sent you. Don't mention who you really are." "What about you?" Emma asked, the youngest at maybe 10 years old. "I've got my own problems." Donald started to walk away, but Kara's voice stopped him again. "The hunters will find us eventually. They always do. But maybe we could help each other." Donald turned back, studying their faces in the flickering light. "What are you proposing?" "Safe passage to the outer rim," Kara said. "In exchange, we'll share our mother's location of the Lurian treasury. A fortune beyond imagination, if it existed." Donald had heard rumors of hidden Lurian wealth, but most spacers dismissed them as legend. Looking at these children, he began to think the stories might be true. "I'll think about it," he said, which was more than he'd planned to offer. Flora Vars was elbow-deep in a hyperdrive motivator when Donald arrived at her shop with the 4 children in tow. She was a small woman with grease-stained coveralls and sharp green eyes that missed nothing. Her workspace occupied a corner of Level 5's industrial section, cramped but efficiently organized. "Donald Rell," she said without looking up from her work, "heard you were looking for passage off this rust bucket." "These kids need a place to lay low for a while," Donald said, avoiding the obvious questions in Flora's expression. She finally looked up, studying the children with the same intensity she'd applied to a complex engine problem. Her gaze lingered on their distinctive features, the blue-tinted skin, the silver hair, the way they stood close together like pack animals. "Azurians," she said matter-of-factly. "Haven't seen your kind in years. Not since the dynasty fell," Kara finished quietly. Flora's expression shifted from curiosity to understanding, then to something approaching awe. She set down her tools and wiped her hands on her coveralls. "Sweet stellar winds," she breathed. "You're them, aren't you? The lost heirs." We don't know what you're talking about, Jake said quickly, but Flora waved him off. I worked maintenance on the Royal Fleet before the rebellion. Recognized the birthmarks immediately. Your mother, Queen Lydia, was a good woman. What happened to her was a crime. Emma started to cry silently, and Sam put a protective arm around her shoulders. The pain of loss was still fresh, even after 2 years of running. The bounty hunters don't know we're here yet, Donald said. But they will. This station's too small to hide for long. Flora nodded grimly. Already heard rumors in the cantinas. Word is spreading fast. By tomorrow, every mercenary and gun for hire in 3 sectors will be converging on Orbital 9. Then we need to leave tonight, Kara said with the authority of someone born to rule. With what ship? Donald asked. I spent my last credits getting here. Flora smiled for the first time since they'd arrived. Funny you should mention that. There's a cargo hauler docked in Bay 12. Owner owes me for repairs he can't afford. Might be willing to work out a trade. What kind of trade? Donald asked suspiciously. The kind that gets these children somewhere safe, Flora replied, and maybe makes us all rich enough to retire. That evening, they huddled in Flora's backroom workshop, planning their escape. The children had changed into maintenance coveralls that Flora scrounged from her supplies, disguising their distinctive appearance. Donald studied a schematic of the station, while Flora checked their weapons, a motley collection of blasters, vibra knives, and one ancient projectile rifle. The cargo hauler's called the Shadow Star, Flora explained. Captain's a drunk named Bricks who owes half the station money. Ship's in decent shape, but the crew's unreliable. How unreliable? Donald asked. The kind that might sell us out for drinking money. Jake looked up from where he'd been whispering with his siblings. What if we don't tell them who we really are? Won't matter, Donald said grimly. Once word gets out that 4 Azurian children left on that ship, every hunter in the galaxy will track it down. Then we make sure word doesn't get out, Kara said with cold determination. Donald studied her face, seeing something that reminded him of her mother's legendary resolve. What are you suggesting? We take the ship, she said simply. Captain and crew become our prisoners until we reach safe territory. That's piracy, Flora pointed out. That's survival, Kara corrected. Our parents died because they trusted the wrong people. We won't make that mistake. Donald found himself nodding. The girl had good instincts. It could work, but we'll need a distraction. Something to keep station security busy while we make our move. Leave that to me, Flora said with a sly grin. I know which maintenance ducts lead to the main power coupling. 2 hours before dawn, chaos erupted on level 7 as a cascading power failure plunged half the station into darkness. Emergency lighting flickered on in the corridors as repair teams scrambled to fix the accidental damage to the primary grid. In the confusion, Donald and Flora led the 4 children through the service tunnels toward docking Bay 12. They moved in single file, weapons ready, listening for any sign of pursuit. The children had adapted quickly to their new reality. No longer royalty, just refugees fighting for survival. They emerged from a maintenance hatch 50 meters from the Shadow Star. The cargo hauler was an ugly, functional vessel with scarred hull plating and jury-rigged modifications. She looked like she'd been built for durability rather than speed or comfort. 2 guards at the airlock, Donald whispered, studying the ship through the gloom. Flora, can you create another distraction? Already on it. Flora pulled out a small device that looked like a chronometer. Timed explosive charge. Not enough to do real damage, but it'll get their attention. She tossed the device toward a stack of fuel containers on the far side of the bay. 30 seconds later, a flash of light and a dull boom sent the guards running toward the disturbance. Move, Donald ordered. They sprinted across the open space, boots pounding on metal decking. The airlock stood open, inviting them into the ship's cramped interior. Donald went first, plasma knife ready, followed by the children and Flora bringing up the rear. The ship's corridors were narrow and poorly lit, but they encountered no resistance until they reached the bridge. Captain Bricks was passed out in his chair, surrounded by empty bottles and the stench of cheap alcohol. His 3 crew members were playing cards in the small wreck area, unaware their ship was being boarded. Donald struck fast and silent. Within minutes, all 4 crew members were unconscious and secured with maintenance cables. Flora began the launch sequence while the children secured their prisoners. Station control is hailing us, Flora called out as the ship's engines rumbled to life. Ignore them, Donald said, strapping himself into the co-pilot seat. Once we clear the station's gravity well, they won't be able to stop us. The Shadow Star lifted off with a groaning of stressed metal and burning fuel. Through the viewports, Donald could see other ships moving in the darkness, hunters drawn by the rumors, arriving too late to claim their prize. But as they accelerated toward the jump point, proximity alarms began wailing. 3 sleek attack ships were rising from the station's underside, weapons powering up. Bounty hunters, Kara said grimly, studying the tactical display. They were waiting for us. Can we outrun them? Jake asked. Flora shook her head. Not in this rust bucket. We'll have to fight. Donald's hands moved across the weapon controls with practiced efficiency. The Shadow Star wasn't a warship, but she had defensive capabilities. Twin laser cannons swiveled toward the approaching hunters as warning shots streaked past their hull. They're trying to disable our engines, Donald observed. Want us alive? That's their mistake, Kara said, her young face hard with determination. The first hunter ship came in low and fast, laser fire strafing their hull. Donald returned fire, his shots going wide as the Shadow Star shuddered under the attack. Sparks flew from overloaded systems as Flora fought to keep them operational. Emma, Sam, get to the escape pods, Kara ordered her younger siblings. If this goes bad, we stay together, Emma interrupted fiercely. Always. The second hunter came in from their starboard side, trying to bracket them with crossfire. Donald rolled the ship hard to port, feeling the artificial gravity fluctuate as systems strained to compensate. A lucky shot from their port cannon clipped the hunter's wing, sending it spinning away in a shower of sparks. But the third ship was closing fast, and Donald could see the distinctive outline of a tractor beam projector under its nose. Once caught in that energy field, they'd be helpless. Flora, I need everything you can give me from the engines, he called out. Already redlining, she shouted back. One more surge and we'll blow the motivator. Then we better make it count. Donald pushed the throttles forward, feeling the deck plates vibrate as the Shadow Star accelerated beyond her design limits. The hunter with the tractor beam fired prematurely, the energy field passing just behind their stern as Donald executed a sharp climbing turn. For a moment they were clear, but alarms were screaming throughout the ship as systems began failing under the strain. Jump coordinates locked in, Flora announced, but we need 30 seconds for the hyperdrive to spin up. 30 seconds might as well have been 30 hours. The 2 remaining hunters were regrouping, coming in for a coordinated attack that would finish the Shadow Star once and for all. That's when Jake stood up from where he'd been huddled with his siblings. I have an idea, the 12-year-old said quietly. Jake, no, Kara warned, recognizing something dangerous in her brother's expression. But Jake was already moving toward the ship's cargo hold, where Captain Bricks kept his legitimate freight alongside the less legal items. Donald heard him rummaging through containers, then a mechanical whining that made his blood run cold. Is that what I think it is? Flora asked. Jake reappeared on the bridge carrying a military-grade missile launcher, probably stolen Imperial equipment that Bricks used for pest control in the outer systems. Lurian princes learn weapons training from age 6, Jake said matter-of-factly, loading the launcher with practiced ease. Mother insisted. Donald couldn't argue with results. When the lead hunter ship came in for its final attack run, Jake was ready. The missile streaked across the void, its warhead designed to penetrate starship armor. The hunter ship vanished in a ball of superheated plasma. Jump drive ready, Flora shouted over the alarms. Coordinates set for the Kepler system, Donald confirmed, his hands moving across the navigation controls. Jumping in 3, 2, 1. The stars stretched into lines of light as the Shadow Star entered hyperspace, leaving the remaining hunter behind in normal space. In the sudden silence that followed their escape, Donald could hear his own heartbeat. Well, he said finally, that could have gone worse. Flora laughed shakily as she began shutting down the overloaded systems. Speak for yourself. Half our power grid is fried, the hyperdrive is held together with prayer and spite, and we've got enough hull damage to keep me busy for a week. But we're alive, Kara pointed out, and free. Donald studied the tactical display, noting their position relative to known shipping lanes and Imperial patrol routes. They were in the deep void between systems, as safe as anyone could be when half the galaxy wanted them dead. For now, he said, but they'll track us eventually. Hunter ships have long-range sensors and Imperial backing. We bought ourselves time, not security. Then we use that time wisely, Kara said with the authority of someone born to command. Emma, help Flora with the repairs. Sam, check our supplies and see what we can salvage from the cargo hold. Jake, secure the prisoners and make sure they can't cause trouble. What about me? Donald asked, curious to see how she'd handle giving orders to someone twice her age. You help me plan our next move, she said simply. We can't run forever. Eventually, we'll have to make a stand. The hyperspace journey to the Kepler system took 6 days, time they used to convert the Shadow Star from a cargo hauler into something resembling a warship. Flora worked miracles with the damaged systems, rerouting power and improvising repairs with salvaged components. The children proved surprisingly useful. Royal education had apparently included practical skills along with protocol and statecraft. Donald found himself impressed by their adaptability. Jake had a natural talent for weapons maintenance, while Sam showed an intuitive understanding of ship systems that made Flora's job easier. Emma, the youngest, had sharp eyes for detail that caught problems the others missed. But it was Kara who truly commanded his respect. She made decisions with calm authority, weighing options and considering consequences like someone far older than her 14 years. When Captain Brix woke up demanding to know what had happened to his ship, she faced him down without flinching. Your ship is now under our command, she told him matter-of-factly. You can cooperate and remain comfortable, or resist and spend the rest of the journey in the cargo hold with the reactor coils. Brix, sobered by their escape from the hunters, chose cooperation. On the 3rd day, Flora made an alarming discovery while checking their navigation systems. We're being followed, she announced during their evening meal of recycled protein and hydroponically grown vegetables. How many ships? Donald asked, already reaching for his weapons. Just one, but it's maintaining perfect distance, matching our speed, following our course changes. Professional work. Donald felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's recycled atmosphere. Imperial intelligence? Or someone who learned from them, Flora agreed grimly. Kara set down her eating utensil and looked thoughtful. There's something I haven't told you about our escape from the royal palace. We weren't alone. Donald waited, recognizing the weight of confession in her voice. Our mother's personal guard, a man named Easter Voss, helped us get away. He was supposed to meet us at a safe house on Kepler Prime. You think he's the one following us? Jake asked. It's possible, Kara said slowly. Easter knew our escape route. If he survived the palace coup, or if he didn't, Donald said darkly, Imperial intelligence has ways of extracting information from prisoners. The thought hung in the air like a toxic cloud. If Easter Voss had been captured and interrogated, then their pursuers knew everything. Their identities, their destination, possibly even their plans. We should change course, Sam suggested. Find somewhere else to hide. No, Kara said firmly. If it is Easter, he risked his life to save ours. We owe him that much loyalty. Donald admired her conviction, but he'd seen too many good people die from misplaced trust. And if it's a trap? Then we'll deal with it when the time comes. Her blue eyes held the same steel that had made the Lurian dynasty legendary. But we won't abandon a friend out of fear. They dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system 3 days later, the Shadow Star's battered hull gleaming dully in the light of twin yellow stars. Kepler Prime hung before them like a jewel, its blue oceans and white clouds promising refuge from the endless void. But their pursuer was already there, waiting in the shadow of the system's largest moon. Imperial design, Flora observed, studying the sleek vessel through the long-range sensors. But the markings are wrong. Someone's modified it extensively. Can you raise them on communications? Donald asked. Already trying. Flora worked at her console, cycling through standard frequencies, getting a response on Imperial Military Channel 7. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a man in his 50s with graying hair and scars that spoke of violence survived. His uniform was Imperial, but the insignia had been removed. Your Highness, he said, bowing slightly toward Kara, I am relieved to find you safe. Easter! Emma cried out, her young face lighting up with joy. Donald's hand remained on his weapon. Something about the man's eyes didn't match his words. Too calculating, too cold for genuine relief. How did you find us? Kara asked, her own expression cautious. I've been tracking Imperial communications since the palace fell, Easter replied smoothly. When I heard about the incident at Orbital 9, I knew it had to be you. Your mother would be proud of how you've survived. Our mother is dead because someone betrayed her, Jake said bluntly. How do we know you're not working for the usurper now? Easter's expression hardened. I've spent 2 years fighting the regime that destroyed our kingdom. Every day has been dedicated to finding you and restoring the Lurian dynasty to its rightful place. It sounded convincing, but Donald had heard similar speeches from double agents before. Prove it, he said quietly. I have something that belongs to you, Easter said. He reached off camera and produced a small crystalline device that made all 4 children gasp. Your mother's memory core. Her final message to her heirs. Kara leaned forward intently. Play it. Easter activated the device and suddenly the bridge was filled with a holographic image of Queen Lydia herself. Even in projection, she radiated the dignity and strength that had made her beloved throughout the Azurian systems. My dear children, the image began, her voice carrying across 2 years and impossible distance. If you are seeing this message, then the worst has come to pass. The palace has fallen, and I am likely dead. Emma began crying silently, while Sam reached out as if to touch his mother's ghostly form. The pain of loss was written across all their faces. But you survived as I knew you would. The Lurian bloodline is stronger than those who would destroy it. In the coming days, you will face choices that will define not only your survival, but the future of our people. The Queen's image paused as if looking directly at each of them in turn. Trust sparingly, love deeply, and never forget that you are the rightful heirs to a throne built on justice and honor. The treasury coordinates are encoded in this message. Use those resources wisely to reclaim what was stolen from our people. Be warned, the recording continued, her voice taking on a more urgent tone. There is a traitor among those closest to you. Someone who helped plan the coup. Someone who knows your weaknesses. Trust no one completely until they have proven themselves through sacrifice. The image began to fade, but Queen Lydia's final words rang out clearly. Remember always that you are loved and that I will watch over you from whatever lies beyond. The hologram disappeared, leaving them in stunned silence. Donald noticed that Easter's expression had grown carefully neutral during the Queen's warning about a traitor. Where did you get this? Kara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Your mother gave it to me the night before the coup, Easter replied. She suspected what was coming. I was to deliver it only if... He let the sentence trail off. If she died, Jake finished grimly. Easter nodded. She also asked me to guide you to the treasury location. With those resources, you could hire an army, purchase ships, begin the long work of restoration. Donald studied the older man's face, looking for tells. Everything about Easter's story was plausible, even compelling. But Queen Lydia's warning about a traitor echoed in his mind. Coordinates for the treasury, Kara said. It wasn't a request. Easter transmitted the data to their navigation system, a set of spatial coordinates in an uninhabited system called Wolf 359, nearly 50 light-years away. I suggest we travel together, Easter continued. My ship is faster and better armed than your cargo hauler. We could transfer you aboard and make better time. No, Donald said immediately. We stay with our ship. You don't trust me. Easter's smile was understanding rather than offended. Wise under the circumstances. Your mother taught you well. Nothing personal, Kara said diplomatically, but we've learned to be careful. Of course, then I suggest we travel in formation. My ship can provide escort while you make necessary repairs. It seemed reasonable, but Donald's instincts screamed warnings. Easter was saying all the right things, but something felt wrong. The timing was too convenient, the discovery too easy. We'll consider it, he said finally. Easter nodded graciously. I'll maintain station while you discuss it among yourselves. But be aware, Imperial forces are mobilizing throughout this sector. The longer we delay, the greater the risk of discovery. The transmission ended, leaving them alone with their doubts and fears. He's lying, Donald said without preamble. You don't know that, Emma protested. Easter saved our lives. He got us out of the palace when everyone else abandoned us. Then why didn't he contact us sooner, Jake asked. 2 years of running, and he shows up now? Maybe he couldn't find us before, Sam suggested. Or maybe he didn't want to until now, Donald countered. Think about it. You're worth more alive than dead, but only if someone can control you. A loyal guard who helped you escape would be the perfect handler. Kara studied the tactical display, noting Easter's ship positioning. He's blocking our exit vector. If we tried to run, he could intercept us. Could be coincidence, Flora said, though her tone suggested she didn't believe it. Mother warned us about a traitor, Kara said slowly. Someone close to us, someone who knew our weaknesses. Easter was her personal guard, Jake pointed out. He knew everything about palace security, our daily routines, our escape plans. The pieces were falling into place, forming a picture none of them wanted to see. Easter Voss, trusted protector of the royal family, positioned perfectly to betray them when the time was right. "So what do we do?" Sam asked. Donald checked their weapon status and engine readiness. The Shadow Star was in better shape than she'd been since leaving Orbital 9, but still no match for Easter's modified Imperial ship in a straight fight. "We play along," he decided. "Accept his escort, act grateful for his protection, but we stay alert and ready to run at the first sign of trouble." "And if he really is trying to help us?" Emma asked. "Then we apologize later," Donald said grimly. "But I'd rather hurt his feelings than end up dead." They formed up with Easter's ship and began the long journey toward Wolf 359, traveling through hyperspace in carefully coordinated jumps. Easter maintained contact throughout the journey, sharing intelligence about Imperial troop movements and offering tactical advice that seemed genuinely helpful. But Donald noticed that their escort was subtly hurting them along specific routes, avoiding certain systems and choosing paths that would make them predictable to anyone tracking their course. On the fifth day of travel, Flora made another disturbing discovery. "We're not alone out here," she announced during their morning briefing. "Long-range sensors are picking up multiple contacts, all maintaining perfect distance." "How many?" Kara asked. "At least 6, possibly more. They're running silent, but I can detect gravitational anomalies from their drive systems." "A full hunter fleet," Donald concluded grimly. "More firepower than we've ever faced." "Easter hasn't mentioned them," Jake observed. "Because he already knows they're there," Donald said. "This whole thing is an elaborate trap. Lead us to a predetermined location, then spring the hunters when we're too far from help to escape." Kara's face had gone pale, but her voice remained steady. "How long until we reach Wolf 359? 18 hours, Flora replied. "Then that's how long we have to figure out a way to survive this." Donald studied the tactical projections, calculating odds and escape vectors. 6 hunter ships against their damaged cargo hauler made for hopeless mathematics. Even if they could somehow disable Easter's vessel, the hunters would overwhelm them within minutes. "We need to change the game," he said finally. "Make them come to us on our terms." "How?" Sam asked. "By giving them what they want," Donald replied, an idea forming in his mind. "Or at least making them think we are." He outlined his plan quickly. It was desperate, relying more on luck and timing than tactical superiority. But it was their only chance. "It might work," Kara said thoughtfully, "but we'll only get one shot. If we miss, then we go down fighting," Jake said with grim determination. "Better than surrendering to become the usurper's trophies." They began preparations immediately. Flora worked to modify their sensor array while the children prepared their weapons and equipment. Donald focused on the timing, calculating distances and velocities with the precision of a man whose life had always depended on such details. 12 hours from Wolf 359, Easter's behavior began to change. His communications became more frequent, ostensibly checking on their status but actually monitoring their position and readiness. The hunter fleet had closed the gap, now visible on their sensors despite attempts at stealth. "The treasury coordinates are in an asteroid field," Easter informed them during what would be their final communication. "Complex navigation required. I recommend we drop out of hyperspace together and proceed in formation." "Understood," Kara replied, playing her part perfectly. "We'll follow your lead." "Excellent. Your mother would be proud of how you've grown, Your Highness. Soon you'll have the resources to reclaim your birthright." Donald muted the transmission and activated their modified sensor array. For a few seconds, they had a clear picture of the entire hunter fleet, 8 ships in total, including Easter's command vessel. All were moving into attack formation. "Here we go," he muttered, initiating the final phase of their plan. They dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Wolf 359's gravity well, the Shadow Star's battered hull gleaming in the light of a red dwarf star. The asteroid field Easter had mentioned was indeed there, a chaotic maze of rock and ice that had once been a planet destroyed by some ancient catastrophe. Easter's ship emerged from hyperspace 50 kilometers away, weapons powered but not yet targeted. Around them, space shimmered as the hunter fleet decloaked, forming a perfect encirclement. "Shadow Star, this is Colonel Easter Voss of Imperial Intelligence," came the transmission, all pretense finally abandoned. "You are surrounded and outgunned. Surrender the Lurian heirs and your deaths will be quick." "Imperial Intelligence," Jake spat. "He's been working for them all along." Probably since before the coup, Donald agreed. Inside information from the Queen's personal guard would have been invaluable for planning the rebellion. You betrayed our mother, Kara said into the open communication channel, her young voice carrying a weight of judgment that made Easter's image flinch. I serve the greater good, Easter replied defensively. The Lurian dynasty was a relic, holding back progress and prosperity. The new regime will bring order to the Azurian systems. By murdering children? Emma asked quietly. By eliminating obstacles to peace, Easter corrected coldly. Your very existence threatens the stability we've worked so hard to achieve. Donald watched the tactical display as the hunter ships completed their formation. Perfect positioning for a massacre, but also exactly where he needed them. You want the Lurian heirs? He called out. Come and take them. He triggered their modified sensor array at full power, sending out a massive electromagnetic pulse that temporarily blinded every ship in the formation. In that moment of confusion, the Shadow Star dove into the asteroid field at maximum velocity. Rock fragments scraped against their hull as Flora navigated through gaps barely wide enough for their ship. Behind them, the hunters were recovering from the sensor pulse and giving chase, but the asteroids forced them to reduce speed and break formation. Phase 2, Donald announced, activating the charges they'd placed in the cargo hold. The explosions weren't meant to damage their ship, but to create the appearance of catastrophic failure. Debris and atmosphere vented into space as the Shadow Star's engines seemed to fail, sending them tumbling toward a massive asteroid. This is Colonel Voss to all hunter units. Easter's voice crackled over the emergency frequencies. The target vessel is down. Move in for recovery operations, but be careful. I want those children alive. The hunters closed in like predators approaching wounded prey, their weapons powered down to avoid accidentally vaporizing their valuable cargo. Easter's ship led the formation, the colonel no doubt eager to personally claim his prize. They were 50 meters away when Donald triggered the real trap. The damaged cargo hauler suddenly roared back to life, her weapon systems fully charged and targeted. At point-blank range, even the Shadow Star's light armament was devastating. Easter's ship staggered under a concentrated barrage that shattered its forward shields and left its hull smoking. But the real surprise was Jake's missile launcher, loaded with the last of Captain Brix's military ordnance. The warhead struck Easter's engine section, turning the elegant Imperial ship into expanding wreckage. One down, Flora announced grimly. 7 to go. The remaining hunters were regrouping, spreading out to avoid the fate that had befallen their leader. But they were now fighting in an environment that favored the Shadow Star, close quarters where maneuverability mattered more than firepower. Donald pushed their engines beyond redline, weaving between asteroids with desperate precision. Laser fire streaked past their hull as the hunters tried to disable rather than destroy their ship. The children were worth nothing dead. Sam, Emma, get to the escape pods, Kara ordered. If we don't make it, we all make it, or nobody does, Emma replied firmly. Donald found himself grinning, despite their desperate situation. These kids had spine. A hunter ship came in too fast, trying to ram them into an asteroid. Donald rolled the Shadow Star inverted, scraping along the rock face as the hunter overshot and smashed into the asteroid's far side. Chunks of metal and stone scattered through the void. 2 down, Jake called out, reloading his launcher with their second-to-last missile. But the remaining hunters had learned from their companions' mistakes. They were hanging back now, coordinating their attacks and using the asteroid field's natural barriers to their advantage. We can't keep this up, Flora warned. Engines are overheating, and we're losing atmosphere from the earlier hits. Donald studied their options. The asteroid field extended for thousands of kilometers in all directions, too far to cross before their pursuers overwhelmed them. But there was something else on the sensors, something that might offer salvation. That's not an asteroid field, he realized suddenly. It's a destroyed planet, and planets have cores. What are you thinking? Kara asked. Heavy elements, compressed under incredible pressure, released when the planet was destroyed. If I'm right, there should be a dense metallic core somewhere in this debris field. And if you're wrong, then we're no worse off than we already are. Donald altered course, diving deeper into the field toward the center where the planet's heart would have been. The hunters followed, probably thinking he was trying to lose them in the maze of larger asteroids. They found it 10 minutes later, a spherical mass of iron and nickel the size of a small moon, its surface pocked with impact craters from the planet's destruction. But more importantly, it was rich in ferrous metals, that would interfere with targeting systems and communications. Into the atmosphere, Donald ordered, though the metallic sphere had no real atmosphere to speak of, just a thin envelope of gases and particles held in place by its gravity. The shadow star skimmed across the core's surface, using its gravitational field to slingshot around to the far side. Behind them, the hunters were having trouble maintaining target locks in the metallic interference. Now what? Jake asked. Now we wait, Donald replied. They have to come to us eventually, and when they do, they'll have to come one at a time through these canyons. The surface of the planetary core was scarred by massive chasms, cracks formed during the original destruction that created perfect ambush sites. Donald selected the deepest canyon and landed the shadow star on a ledge halfway down its wall. Weapons check, Kara ordered, with the authority of someone born to command. We make our stand here. They didn't wait long. The first hunter ship appeared at the canyon's rim, scanning for signs of their prey. Donald let it descend halfway down before opening fire with everything they had. The concentrated barrage caught the hunter by surprise, overwhelming its shields and punching through its hull. The ship crashed into the canyon wall in a shower of sparks and burning metal. 3 down, Sam announced, but the others had learned from their companion's fate. The next ship came in fast and low, strafing their position before Donald could acquire a target lock. Laser fire scorched the rock around them as the shadow star shuddered under the attack. Hull breach in Section 4, Flora reported. We're losing pressure. Emergency seals holding, Jake added, his young face grim with concentration as he worked the damage control systems. The third hunter tried a different approach, dropping chaff and electronic countermeasures to confuse their targeting systems. But Jake was ready with the missile launcher, leading the target perfectly as the warhead connected with the hunter's engine nacelle. 4 down, Emma said quietly. 3 to go. Donald was beginning to think they might actually survive when the remaining hunters changed tactics entirely. Instead of coming down into the canyon, they took positions on the rim and began methodically destroying the rock walls with concentrated fire. They're going to collapse the canyon, Flora realized. Bury us alive. Then we don't give them the chance, Kara said. She was studying the tactical display with the same intensity her mother had once brought to matters of state. Donald, can we get airborne? Not for long. The moment we lift off, they'll have clear shots at us. How long do you need? Donald calculated quickly. 30 seconds to clear the canyon, maybe another minute to reach the surface. That's all we need. Kara turned to her siblings. Remember what Mother taught us about royal duty? They nodded solemnly, understanding passing between them without words. What are you planning? Donald asked suspiciously. Something our ancestors would approve of, Kara replied. Flora, do we have any of Captain Brix's illegal cargo left? Flora checked her inventory. Some mining charges, a few containers of refined explosive compounds. Why? Because we're going to give the hunters something to remember us by. They worked quickly, rigging the explosive charges throughout the Shadow Star's hull and engineering sections. Not enough to vaporize the ship, but more than sufficient to create a devastating blast when detonated. This is insane, Donald protested. We'll be flying a bomb. Exactly, Kara said with a cold smile that reminded him eerily of her late mother. And when we ram the lead hunter ship, we'll take it with us. There has to be another way. There is no other way, Jake interrupted. Don't you see? They'll never stop hunting us. Even if we escape today, tomorrow there will be more hunters, more bounties, more death. The only way to end this is to make the cost too high. Donald looked at their faces. 4 children who had seen too much death, lost too much innocence. They were talking about suicide with the calm determination of seasoned warriors. Your mother didn't save you so you could throw your lives away, he said quietly. Our mother didn't save us, Emma replied sadly. She died for us. There's a difference. And now it's our turn to make that choice, Sam added. Donald felt something break inside his chest, a cynicism built over years of violence and betrayal, cracking in the face of such raw courage. These weren't just some royal brats trying to reclaim a throne. They were the last representatives of something noble in a galaxy gone mad with greed and power. There might be another way, Flora said suddenly. She was studying the sensor readings from the planetary core, her engineer's mind working through possibilities. These heavy metals, the gravitational anomalies, I think I can use them. Use them how? Kara asked. To create a localized electromagnetic pulse. much bigger than what we used before, big enough to disable every ship in the system. Donald studied the readouts, seeing what she was proposing. That would require overloading our entire power grid. The ship would be dead in space. But so would the hunters, Flora pointed out, and with their systems down, we could board one of their ships, take it over. It was barely possible, relying on engineering theory and desperate hope, but it was better than suicide. Do it, Kara ordered. Flora began the dangerous process of modifying their power systems, rerouting energy from life support and propulsion into the sensor array. The ship grew cold as heating failed, and the lights dimmed to emergency levels. EMP ready, she announced, but we'll only get one shot. After this, we'll be helpless. Then we make it count, Donald said, bringing the Shadow Star's engines online for their final flight. They lifted off from the canyon floor like a wounded bird, climbing toward the surface where 3 hunter ships waited. Laser fire immediately began tracking them, forcing Donald into evasive maneuvers that pushed their damaged systems to the breaking point. Now, Flora, Kara shouted. The electromagnetic pulse erupted from their ship like a shockwave, invisible energy racing outward at the speed of light. When it struck the hunter ships, their systems simply died. Weapons offline, engines silent, life support failing. The Shadow Star died too, her engines going dark as every system shut down. They drifted in the metallic debris field, as helpless as their enemies. Phase 2, Donald said, reaching for his plasma knife. They suited up quickly, using the ship's remaining emergency power to cycle the airlock. 4 children and 2 adults, armed with primitive weapons, preparing to board an enemy vessel in the vacuum of space. The nearest hunter ship was drifting 50 meters away, its crew undoubtedly working frantically to restore power. Donald led the boarding party, using suit thrusters to cross the gap between ships. Jake followed close behind, missile launcher replaced by a razor-sharp vibroblade that had once belonged to his father. They cut through the hunter ship's airlock with plasma torches, entering a vessel filled with emergency lighting and panicking crew members. The hunters had expected to face another ship in battle, not armed boarders in close combat. The fighting was brutal and personal. In the narrow corridors of the ship, training and desperation mattered more than numbers. Donald moved through the hunters like a force of nature, his plasma knife carving through armor and flesh with equal ease. But it was the children who truly shocked their enemies. Jake fought with the controlled fury of someone seeking vengeance for his parents' murder. Sam and Emma worked together, covering each other's flanks with the practiced coordination of siblings who had learned to rely on each other for survival. And Kara fought like a queen reclaiming her kingdom, every move calculated to inspire terror in her enemies. Within minutes, the ship was theirs. Engines coming online, Flora announced from the bridge, having managed to restore basic power to the vessel. But the other hunters are recovering too. We need to move. Donald sealed the last of the defeated crew in the ship's brig, then joined the others on the bridge. Through the viewports, he could see the other hunter ships beginning to power up their systems. Can we outrun them? Kara asked. In this ship? Easily, but they'll follow us wherever we go. Then we don't run, she said quietly. We finish this. Donald stared at her, seeing something in her expression that made him remember why the Lurian dynasty had ruled for centuries. This wasn't the frightened child who had begged for help on Orbital 9. This was a queen discovering her power. You want to fight 2 hunter ships with a single captured vessel? He asked. I want to send a message, Kara corrected, to every bounty hunter, every mercenary, every Imperial intelligence operative in the galaxy. The cost of hunting the Lurian heirs is your life. Jake was already at the weapons console, familiarizing himself with the hunter ship's military-grade armament. These ships have particle beam cannons and quantum torpedoes. Real weapons, not the salvage junk we've been using. And trained crews who know how to use them, Donald pointed out. Then we'll have to be better than trained, Sam said with grim determination. The first hunter ship came for them 5 minutes later, its weapons hot and targeting systems locked. But Donald was ready, rolling their captured vessel into an attack pattern that put the approaching ship directly in their sights. Fire, Kara ordered. Twin particle beams lanced out, striking the hunters' shields with devastating force. The enemy ship staggered, its defensive screens overloading under the concentrated assault. A follow-up torpedo spread shattered its hull, sending the vessel spinning away in a cloud of wreckage and atmosphere. 5 down, Emma said quietly. The last hunter ship approached more cautiously, using the asteroid field for cover. Its captain was clearly a veteran, someone who understood that reckless aggression had destroyed his companions. The battle that followed was a chess match played with starships in death. The hunter captain tried to use his ship's superior speed to outmaneuver them, while Donald relied on the asteroid field's complex gravitational patterns to set up ambush shots. For 20 minutes, they danced through the debris field, trading shots that lit up space with deadly energy. The hunter ship scored several hits, battering their stolen vessel's shields and scorching its hull. But each time Donald managed to evade destruction, returning fire with precision strikes that gradually wore down his opponent. The end came suddenly. The hunter captain, growing desperate, tried to ram them in a last-ditch attack, but he misjudged the asteroid field's gravitational shear, and his ship was caught between two massive rocks that crushed it like an insect. "6 down," Jake announced, "all targets destroyed." In the sudden silence that followed, Donald found himself looking at 4 children who had somehow become something more. They had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious, not through luck or superior firepower, but through courage and determination. "What now?" Sam asked. Kara studied the tactical display, noting their position relative to known shipping lanes and Imperial patrol routes. "Now we disappear. Find somewhere safe to plan our next move." "The usurper will send more hunters," Emma pointed out. "Let them come," Kara replied with cold authority. "Each ship they send against us is one less ship defending their stolen throne." Donald realized that something fundamental had changed during their fight for survival. These weren't refugees anymore. They were the beginning of a revolution. They spent the next 6 months moving through the galaxy's underworld, gathering resources and allies. The captured hunter ship, renamed the Queen's Vengeance, became the flagship of a growing fleet. Word spread through the spacer community. The Lurian heirs had returned, and they were no longer running. Donald found himself serving as more than just a protector. He became their military advisor, training them in tactics and strategy while they taught him about leadership and honor. Flora joined them permanently, her engineering skills invaluable in keeping their growing fleet operational. The children, he still thought of them as children, though they were maturing rapidly under the pressure of command. Each found their own roles in the developing rebellion. Jake became their master of arms, training new recruits in weapons and combat tactics. Sam took charge of intelligence operations, his natural cunning serving them well in gathering information about Imperial activities. Emma, the youngest, revealed an unexpected talent for diplomacy, negotiating agreements with smugglers and pirates who might otherwise have turned them over for the bounty. And Kara was becoming the queen her mother had trained her to be. Their first major victory came when they liberated a prison convoy carrying political dissidents from the Azurian systems. The grateful refugees swelled their ranks and provided valuable intelligence about conditions in their former territories. The second victory was more symbolic but equally important. They intercepted and destroyed a convoy of Imperial ships carrying tribute from the conquered Lurian worlds. The message was clear. The usurper's rule was no longer absolute. By the end of their first year as active rebels, they commanded 12 ships and nearly 300 followers. The bounty on their heads had grown to 50 million credits each, but no hunter dared attempt collection. Too many of their colleagues had died trying. Donald often found himself amazed by the transformation. The frightened children he'd found on Orbital 9 had become leaders of a revolution that was spreading across multiple star systems. They still faced impossible odds. The usurper controlled the entire Imperial fleet and had the backing of powerful corporations, but they were no longer helpless. Standing on the bridge of the Queen's Vengeance, watching a convoy of refugee ships under their protection, Donald reflected on the choices that had brought him here. He could have walked away at any point, taken his share of salvaged wealth, and disappeared into the Outer Rim. Instead, he'd chosen to stand with 4 children against an empire. It was, he decided, the best decision he'd ever made. "Incoming transmission from the lead refugee ship," Flora announced. "They're requesting permission to join our fleet permanently." "Granted," Kara replied without hesitation. "Make them welcome, and see what skills they can contribute to our cause." She turned to Donald with a smile that reminded him of her mother's legendary grace. "Any regrets about getting involved in royal politics?" Donald looked around the bridge, taking in the efficient activity of their crew and the tactical displays showing their growing influence. In the distance, he could see the lights of their refugee ships, thousands of families who now looked to these young heirs for protection and hope. Just one, he said finally. Kara raised an eyebrow questioningly. I wish I'd found you sooner.